Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It. I'm Nina Rosner, and I'm here with Kyle Hargrove, our favorite licensed professional counselor. Today, we're going to dig into, is your complaining ruining your attachment? Just saying, it's a thing. So we're going to dig into the topic around attachment styles, but also last time, Kyle and I discussed complaining and the horror that is for yourself and your relationship. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what are attachment styles about? How does that impact them? I want to refer you over to our website, greaterimpactcouples.org. You can fill out a free marriage assessment and see if you should be mentoring other people with us or if maybe your marriage could use some help. So seriously, go check it out, greaterimpactcouples.org. All right. So when we talked last about complaining, we like really dug into how the complaint process really impacts your brain negatively. And you said something today when we were talking about this that was really kind of a whoa for me, that our brains, we do that naturally, like we form that pattern naturally. And can you elaborate a little bit more about that and then what's at stake, what we need to do?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Um, the fascination that we should have with the human brain knows no ends. What our brains are capable of, both in terms of what they can help us accomplish, as well as what they can do without our knowledge, in terms of, let me start this over. I've said in terms of 6 times.
Take two.
Sure, I'd love to. It is undeniably fascinating to learn just a little bit about the human brain and what it's capable of. And when I say what it's capable of, I'm speaking to not just what it can help us accomplish as a human being person, but what it can do behind the scenes that we're not even aware of based on how we think, the feelings that we have, the words that we say, and the actions that we take. So when I say that, I'm talking about, and I don't know if it's a thing or if it's a condition or what, but it's called neuroplasticity.
Mhm.
And it simply refers to the brain's ability to change not only its structure and form, and that means it rewires the neural pathways, but to change the function, not to whether it thinks or not, but in how it sees the world. And when we talk about the thoughts and the feelings and the beliefs and the behaviors and so forth that we do, we get into patterns of repetition based on the things that we think, feel, believe, and do.
Mhm.
The brain responds to what is repetitive.
Mm.
So, extreme repetition of certain types of thoughts and beliefs, and then ultimately our actions, can rewire our brain to see the world the way that we think it is. In other words, in spite of the fact that I have a relatively neutral brain in my head when I'm born, if my thoughts and beliefs and emotions and the actions that I take are based on the belief that the world is a really scary place,
Mhm.
then my brain is going to, in places, reform itself, rewire itself to see the world just that way,
Yeah.
whether it is or not. In other words, without special effort, I can't not see the world as a really scary place with tons of things at every turn that want to destroy me, or at least make me pee a little. I mean, it just depends on how scary it is.
Right, Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
it's
not talking
bad.
about I'm not talking about a scary movie. I'm talking about, this place is out to get me.
I was in the clubhouse at the barn with my granddaughter. She's 4. And this is Monday. I get to sit with her for an hour while her mom does a riding lesson. There was a mosquito in there, which makes no sense because today was 25 degrees. And I'm like, what kind of devious thing is happening here that it was so beautiful, but there's mosquitoes and now it's frozen again? Like, what? Spring in Ohio. Anyway, this mosquito comes flying, and my granddaughter loses her ever-loving mind. It's gonna sting me. It's horrible. And she is freaking out. And I'm an old lady now, so I tried to kill the thing. Like she's trying to run from it. I'm trying to annihilate this thing, mainly
And
because,
it's just trying to stay alive.
well, I know it's just minding its own business, going, I'm just a little thirsty. Hello. But, and I'm not even thinking, like, I have some friends that have had run-ins with encephalitis, the West Nile thing, and they're a little afraid of mosquitoes, and understandably so. I was afraid of bees after I got stung like 28 times when I flipped a railroad tie over. Like it makes sense, right? But
That'll do it.
yeah, that'll do it. Um, but to your point, we can be afraid of things that we don't even have experience with.
Right.
But what is that? These Proverbs, I'm going to butcher this. It's 23:7 or 27:3 that says, as a man thinketh, so he is.
Yes.
So whatever happens between these ears that's reality for us. It's either terrifying or something to be conquered, or a whole host of other things.
If we knew, if we even knew how many mosquitoes had been on us that we never even know about.
I know. Yeah.
We think about the ones we've seen and the ones we've slapped away and the ones we've gone arrow, when we hit and they don't even begin to touch the number of mosquitoes that have been on our bodies that we never even knew about.
Right.
So but just take the mosquito and turn it into something else and place it in a different place in life.
Yeah.
And we blow up, we expand exponentially
Hmm.
the need to fear something. I mean, okay, there is logic that says if there's something that can truly harm you, then be smart about it.
Right.
Don't go there. Don't go near that thing. Don't handle that compound or whatever it might be. Instead, we presume that there are those types of things all around us that are,
Mhm.
that we have to be constantly aware of. And it's true enough that we need to be able to be aware of whatever comes our way, but to obsess about it and have compulsive thinking about it is it's very unhealthy. And you know, so I'm not sure how we got to this fear thing, but you know, needless to say, um, the ability for our brains to be able to shift into a place where we see the world in an unfair way, actually, because
Mhm.
it's definitely stilted to fit the narrative of our fears and our insecurities
Yeah.
or the things that irritate us, which are typically going to refer back to those fears and insecurities. But let's make sure that we hit another important part about how we get to places like that. And that ties back into the attachment styles
Mm.
because of the attachment styles, the secure, the anxious, the avoidant, and the disorganized. Um, those are the types of things that are woven into the fabric of who we are when we're very, very small.
Hmm.
So the influences that we have around us, the people who we learn from, who we watch, who we mimic, are the ones that are going to help us to go along with our DNA and our natural personality, and then we pour in there the examples of people's behaviors and the way that they communicate and the way that they attach in
Hmm.
relationships. And all of that is mixed up together and it comes out as you or it comes out as
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
and how we are in relation to interactions with other people. It is a mega muddled cocktail with lots
I
of
like that.
ingredients
Yeah.
and lots of different names.
Well, you know, the neat thing about attachment styles is that, and this is, so related to what you were talking about with the way that the neuroplasticity works, because your brain can change, and God is in the business of transforming our minds into the mind of Christ. Like that's what we're signing up for. I used to be fearful, one of the anxious attachment styles. And every test I take now, it's just secure. Even in the relationship where I was most anxious, right? And yeah, I was probably anxious for a lot of my childhood and then into relationships growing up. But the cool thing is that God can heal all of that. And you morph into this person that you've wanted to be imperfectly, we'll say, because that's just the story till we croak. Like that's just how that is. What's interesting though is, the people I work with, one of the most common things, and maybe you see this a lot too, is that there's this almost obsession sometimes with certain people around narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fun. I met with somebody yesterday who, was talking about the selfish nature of their spouse. And of course, right? We're all selfish. Hello. We come out of the womb like that. We're all selfish. And so growing up weans you off of that. But if you look for that in your spouse, you're going to find it. And what's really interesting is, so I had this conversation yesterday and I went, oh, that's so, I hate that for them. That's a struggle. I understand it. And part of it was the spouse had been diagnosed secondhand, which I have a question for you about, by the way, by two other people, therapists, that they were narcissistic. And the I was listening to a podcast today where they were talking about this, and what was interesting was that the therapist that was on this podcast was saying, yeah, we should not, as therapists, say there's no way for people to change, or that you need to get out of this relationship because this person sounds narcissistic, and you're done for. We can't really predict that because even when I've thought I could, I've been wrong. So saw that, and then 2 hours later, I opened up email and there's an email from a guy that's basically saying the same thing. I'm like, Lord, are you telling me something here? So one of the questions I had for you, because I hear this a lot, my therapist thinks my spouse is a narcissist. Like, is that really even possible for a therapist to diagnose somebody else's behavior by talking to someone else who has experience with that person? Like, is that real?
No, I mean, it's real that a therapist will say to somebody, I think your spouse or your neighbor or whoever it is a narcissist. Uh, it's an unfair thing to say
Mhm.
about somebody that you've never met. I think what sometimes we do as therapists, and I have to say I'm guilty of it on occasion, probably more often than I even know, is we so desire to relate with that person. And when we have that desire, which is not a bad desire,
Mhm.
we tend to believe everything they say, or we
Yeah,
believe their version of
right.
stories that they tell us that have to do with how they relate with other people and other
Mhm.
people relate with them. And that really is the thing they want us to hear is how other people relate with them. They
Mhm.
did this and he said that and she was so mean and you know didn't I do good because I didn't kill anybody?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but the truth of the matter is I think that people are far too quick to say to a mental health professional, I think such and such is a narcissist. And I think mental health professionals are far too quick to say, that sounds like somebody who's a narcissist, or, yeah, I agree with you. Um, I think that it's way too easily thrown around and, again, unfair. Now, if I were to say, man, those are really characteristic of narcissistic behavior,
Mhm.
that's probably a little more fair because if that person is telling me the truth, I can characterize a behavior as falling into a certain category, but I'm not diagnosing anybody.
Right. Yeah. And
Maybe they're just really mean. Maybe they just really don't like you. Maybe, what? As a matter of fact, it doesn't sound like anybody likes you. Can you see the common denominator?
oh my gosh. Okay, we're off on a thing now. Well, here's the thing that's kind of becoming an aha for me um, around this, because of the lens that we have as complaining, right? And the habit that we then form and the trenches that we form in our brains around this. Whether that person is or isn't a narcissist, it really doesn't matter. We're going to perceive them that way because we're on
Hmm.
the lookout for that. And that it's such an interesting thing because the work that I do is a little bit different in that when I have a men's group and a women's group, it's both halves of the couple in the different groups. A lot of times each week they bring the same event to talk about. And, we have 100% confidentiality rule. So I'm hearing this fresh and it is astonishing to me. You can't tell what really happened. One person insists that they're the person that built the train table while their spouse was criticizing them, while the other person says literally exactly the same thing. I was building this train table and my spouse was criticizing me. And I'm sitting there going, wow, how is it possible that two people can have this kind of misperception? Because you know that there's somebody building it. And maybe they were both criticizing, right? Like, I don't really know what happened there. It's really interesting.
Right. So and this is something you learn over time, whether you're a coach or a therapist or just, someone who talks a lot with, I mean, I think a lot of people in the pastorate and ministry
Mm.
learn to do this if they're good, and that is to separate the details
Yes.
from the incident and focus on the behaviors and the feelings that is created,
Yeah.
because you're never ever going to cause their views of what occurred to be parallel. you know they're going
Yep.
to have variations in their perception that will never allow that to happen, no matter what you say. And when it's all said and done, they're going to look at you and go, well, you weren't there, so you can't say that. So
Right. Well, yeah, it's just really interesting that those things don't even matter, like
yeah.
at all. To your point, it's the what are the feelings of the person, what are the perceptions they have, and usually the perception they have of themselves, because that's what's underneath what they think their spouse thinks of them. Like, because otherwise it wouldn't matter. They'd be able to discern reality and their identity in that
Yeah.
moment, which honestly comes back to the attachment style. Because if you're securely attached, it doesn't matter what your spouse thinks.
Right.
It just doesn't. Like you want to have winsome relationships, but you're not going to have your identity challenged and feel like you're a big loser in life if your spouse thinks something different than you do, if you're securely attached.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, when I look at attachment styles, it's like, okay, there's essentially, we've been told there are four, and we'll go with that. But it's like the other three are clamoring to become the one.
Hmm.
Okay, because secure attachment is the only one that we talk about that's healthy,
Yes.
that is productive when it comes to moving relationships forward instead of dragging them back. And so if we want to, you know merge the idea of chronic complaining in with attachment styles, I think the probably the fairest thing to do is to say all of the other three, the avoidant, the anxious, and the disorganized, are going to cause that person to be more prone to chronic complaining. But the type of attachment style, the one that they fall into, is going to determine on more what that looks like.
Hmm.
The anxious person is probably going to need validation and affirmation. And so their complaining is going to create a scenario where you either affirm me and validate me by agreeing with me in my complaint, or that means anything other than an agreement means you're not validating me, you're not affirming me. And that just speaks to my anxiety and my insecurity.
Yeah. And underneath that often is the anxiety that they have about themselves.
Yeah.
So that you've got, I'm worried about what you think of me. I'm worried and I'm thinking these things of me myself because you're thinking these things of me because it's an external locus of control when you've got an insecure attachment,
Yeah.
regardless of what type it is.
And so if the insecure attachment style person is looking for validation and affirmation from people, the avoidant person is going to be a little more sneaky. Okay. Well, avoid that word in itself kind of lends itself to the sneakification of things. So they're going to be, and when I say a little more sneaky, it sounds kind of fun, but it's not, because what that typically means is they're going to be passive aggressive in how
Mm,
they complain. And I I realize that I have had some experience in my own life with passive aggressive people that were in very close relationships with me. So I'm a little little sensitive to it. But it to me is it's one of the most difficult uh, characteristics of an individual to deal with
mhm,
when you're around them on the regular.
mhm.
It's exhausting, quite frankly. And so when they're complaining consistently in passive aggressive manners, uh, in manners that say one thing but mean another,
Yeah.
you quit. At least I quit trying to figure out what they actually meant. It
Mhm.
wasn't very difficult to know, but it's almost like a puzzle that they want you to put together, because I'm going to say one thing, but I mean something else. And how you respond to that is going to tell me what I need to know about whether I'm going to, participate with you nicely, or whether it's not going to be fun when you get home.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and so many of those folks are actually terrified of connection.
Yeah.
And so they're going to do all this stuff that push that away. And then that's how that works, by the way, because it's not easy to connect with that.
Yeah, and it's the pushing away. I'm glad you said that, because the passive aggressive person is pushing, pushing, pushing to see how far you will go. But they lose sight of the fact that there's a line. There's a line out there somewhere, and when you push people over that line, they may not come back.
Hmm.
And they seem to have lost sight of that, and so they push, push, push to see how far you go. Except there's no formula. There's no place at which you say, okay, that's as far as I'll push. Nope,
Hmm.
and they don't know they're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a gut reaction, natural reaction, and they don't even have an awareness oftentimes, or they are trying to stop what feels like a push to them, so they're going to push back. But yeah, and they don't even realize. And there's a reason why people do that. It's like to your point, it comes from childhood. There's a reason why people are like this. And I have watched miracles happen with when God has gotten involved in that, and he has healed, well, all the different attachment styles and move people into secure attachment.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate goal because the identity of Christ is secure. only the identity of Christ is secure. But boy, is it
Well,
messy otherwise.
the one that's probably the most difficult to identify, and so maybe that makes it easiest to identify, is because if it's not these other two things, then it's everything else. I don't know. But it's the disorganized attachment style because it's erratic.
Hmm.
You don't always know which direction or how this person is going to handle their chronic complaining, dissatisfaction, negativity, pessimism, call it what you want. But they grapple with conflicting desires of closeness in a relationship because their complaining is typically going to be about traumatic issues or traumatic experiences and a fear of intimacy.
Hmm.
So it's it's a crapshoot. You just don't know. Sometimes they may respond perfectly normally to something, and the same thing later occurs, and it's a completely opposite or different type of a response.
So I have a question around this. The thing that's coming to mind, and I don't have a master's degree to diagnose people with this stuff. So what I'm wondering about is the I hate you, don't leave me, bipolar borderline kind of thing,
Mhm.
and this type of attachment style. Is there a connection there?
I think so. I think it's safe to say that, well, I'm certainly not diagnosing anybody without seeing them, but I think it's safe to say that there are characteristics of both that, that would allow for that statement.
Hmm.
There's something there. And the characteristics of both of these are similar enough that you could say one may cause the other, that you could say that you begin thinking about someone differently when their reactions or responses to you are erratic. They're not the same. They are one day, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't see how possibly I could live without you. Um, and then the next day, I don't ever want to see your face again. I don't know why I ever thought I needed you. That's not only difficult to take, it's difficult to take apart.
Hmm.
So, uh, to see the push me pull you and the back and forth of this person grappling with their conflicting desires for closeness and safety, uh, and feeling like they really need it and want it one day, and then the next you know they wouldn't take it from you if you offered it on a platter,
Hmm.
and they often say so.
Yeah. It sounds like the bungee jump from hell, interacting with that. Where you're up and down and up and down, and each yank
Yeah,
is
and
a G-force
that's
that
that's
turns
the
your stomach.
tension that's created. That much like a bungee cord, but the tension that's created makes a person say, "I would rather bungee jump into hell."
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
they have to deal with this because I don't know whether I'm coming or going, whether I'm loved or hated, whether I'm welcome or pushed away.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a crazy way to live.
Yeah.
I will say this: there is no shortage of drama, and no 2 days are alike.
See if you're up for that rodeo. Yeah, that's fair.
If you're an
So,
adventure seeker, this might be the one for you.
no, oh man, like I'm an adventure seeker, but I'll take a hard pass on that noise.
Thank
Like,
you.
sorry,
Yes.
no. I don't need that kind of crazy in my life because you just don't know what you're getting, and it's way too up and down for the daily. Um, when you're looking at all of this, one of the things I'm grateful for is the way that you work with people and the process that we use as well, because cognitive behavior therapy is all designed, regardless of what attachment style you have. How about we be secure? How about we move this direction? That's really the goal. And all the other stuff, it doesn't matter what label you put on it, honestly.
Yeah.
It's let's move this direction so your life works for you. And
Well, let's kind of think about a Christmas tree. And the secure attachment style is the star on the
Uh-huh.
top of the tree or the cowboy hat or whatever it is from wherever you live. Okay. And the rest of the tree goes down from here. So
Yeah.
we have anxious, avoidant, and disorganized down here at the bottom of the tree. And the design of all of them is to work their way toward the point, you know,
Yeah.
toward being more like that.
Hmm.
And if we can accomplish that, even in part, we're making progress.
Yes. Very much so. Yeah, that's awesome. And thanks for letting me know what y'all in Texas do for Christmas on your Christmas tree, because I never heard of cowboy hat on top of there. That's a unique idea.
I am shocked that you being from Wyoming,
Montana.
which is the same thing, only just next door neighbors. Okay. But
Hold up. Hold up. Okay.
you
Okay.
could stick me in the middle of either one of them. And though I've been both places,
Uh,
I wouldn't know which one I was in unless you told me.
okay. Well, all right. That it is kind of the same mountain range. That's
Yeah.
fair. And the
Yeah.
ski resorts all look the same pretty much. So,
Yeah.
but to your point, Texas, cowboy hat, top of the tree. Got it.
Yeah.
Out here in Ohio, we just put an angel up there or a star. So we're pretty
Those
boring
seem to be the
compared.
two traditional choices.
Yeah, well, your Jesus probably rides, well, everybody's Jesus rides a horse. Like that's my favorite thing about him in the end days,
Hmm.
in the Revelation Jesus, like he's my favorite Jesus in the Bible. Because the horse, um, but yours has obviously got a hat on as well. So there's that. German tradition with the cowboy.
Yeehaw.
Yeah. So, what's one piece of advice you would give somebody that's recognizing themselves in these insecure attachments and going, what do I do? How do I stop this? How do I
Yeah.
do all that?
Well, I would give the same piece of advice to a person if they see it in themselves or if they're concerned about it in someone with whom they have a relationship. And that is err on the side of mercy and grace because you don't know necessarily what's causing this type of response or reaction in relationships. The thing I would probably be more critical of is whether or not somebody is willing to work on it.
Yeah.
But don't jump to conclusions about why somebody is a certain way or why they do or don't do certain things in in a dyad, that would presume certain types of behaviors, and then when they don't happen or they don't happen the way we expect them to, we want to jump into diagnostician mode and say, well, that must be because of this or that. We're seeing more. I would say this: I'm seeing more and more socially and culturally a climate of you don't know what other people have been through. You
Yeah.
don't know where they've been, what's happened to them in their lives. So tap the brakes on the judgment.
Yep. Yeah.
That's what I
That's great advice. Yeah.
don't judge yourself too harshly
Yep.
until you've delved in and gotten some help with that. And don't judge others too harshly because you may be unaware of some place they've been in their life that would cause them to be reactionary that way.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think you and I both have seen God do miraculous things in relationships and marriages that other people have given up on.
Yeah.
So that's who God is. That he's that big. So
Why we keep doing what we do.
amen to that. Absolutely. So if you want to check in with Kyle Hargrove, if you live in the great state of Texas, you can do that at Kyle Hargrove LPC. It's KYLEHARGROVE LPC at gmail.com. You can grab a spot on his calendar and yeah, so you can see him as your therapist in Texas. If you're outside of that, well, you're stuck with us. But we love you anyway. And we hope to see you in the next episode. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and you can learn more about dealing with conflict and solving some of your relationship challenges. We'll see you soon.